The sun beat down on the asphalt, creating waves of heat that rose from the road. Officer James Brennan wiped the sweat from his forehead as he sat in his patrol car, parked just off the highway leading into town. His eyes stung from lack of sleep, and his uniform felt uncomfortably tight after the large lunch he'd eaten to keep himself awake. This was his second shift in a row, 14 hours on the job already with 4 more to go. His radio crackled with the usual chatter, but he'd turned the volume down. The constant noise had been giving him a headache all afternoon. The department was short-staffed again, which meant double shifts for everyone. Budget cuts had hit them hard this year, with promises of new hires that never materialized. James checked his watch and sighed. His wife had called 3 times already. Their anniversary dinner would have to be postponed, just like last year and the year before that. He thought about how her voice had changed over the phone when he told her, that slight hardening, the quiet resignation. It was becoming all too familiar. He reached for his lukewarm coffee when his radar detector beeped. A silver sedan was approaching, going about 5 miles over the speed limit. Not worth pulling over on a normal day, but James wasn't having a normal day. He put his coffee down, started the engine, and flipped on his lights. Inside the silver sedan, 17-year-old Maya Wilson felt her heart drop when she saw the police lights flash in her rearview mirror. She checked her speedometer, only 5 miles over. She'd been watching the time more than her speed. Her volunteer shift at Memorial Hospital started in 20 minutes, and she was cutting it close. Maya carefully pulled over to the shoulder and turned down her music. She took a deep breath and tried to remember what her father had taught her about traffic stops. Keep your hands visible. Be respectful. Don't make sudden movements. She watched in her side mirror as the officer approached. He walked with stiff shoulders, his hand resting near his belt. Maya rolled down her window and smiled nervously. "License and registration," Officer Brennan said without any greeting, his voice flat and tired. "Of course, officer," Maya said, keeping her voice steady. "My registration is in the glove compartment. I'm going to reach for it now." Officer Brennan didn't respond, just watched with narrowed eyes as she retrieved the documents with trembling fingers. She handed them over, careful not to make any sudden movements. "Do you know why I pulled you over?" he asked, scanning her license. "I think I might have been going a little over the speed limit," Maya admitted. "I'm sorry about that. I'm trying to get to the hospital for my volunteer shift." Something in Officer Brennan's expression changed at her words. His mouth tightened at the corners. "The hospital, huh?" he said, an edge creeping into his voice. "That's convenient," Maya blinked in confusion. "Sir? You'd be surprised how many people suddenly remember important appointments when they get pulled over," Officer Brennan said. "Everyone's got somewhere important to be." "I volunteer in the children's cancer ward," Maya explained, feeling her chest tighten. "I've been doing it for over a year now. I can show you my volunteer badge." "That won't be necessary," he cut her off. He shone his flashlight around the interior of her car, then walked around to the back. Maya sat perfectly still, her hands gripping the steering wheel. When Officer Brennan returned to her window, his expression had hardened further. "Your left taillight is out," he said. Maya's eyebrows shot up. "It is? I had no idea. I'll get it fixed right away." "You expect me to believe that?" Officer Brennan's voice had taken on an almost mocking tone. "That's a safety violation. Driving with a broken taillight is dangerous." "I honestly didn't know," Maya said, trying to keep her voice level despite the growing knot in her stomach. "My dad and I check the car regularly, but we must have missed it." "Your dad, huh?" Officer Brennan looked down at her license again. "Well, your dad should have taught you to take better care of your vehicle, and to watch your speed." A car drove past slowly, the driver glancing over at them. Maya felt her face grow hot with embarrassment. "I understand, sir. I'll get the light fixed today and be more careful about my speed." Officer Brennan seemed unmoved by her cooperation. "I could have this car impounded, you know that? Driving an unsafe vehicle, speeding, that's points on your license. Might even affect your insurance." Maya felt tears threatening to form. "Please, officer. I've never had a ticket before. I promise to get the light fixed immediately after my shift." "Your shift," Officer Brennan repeated as if he didn't believe her. "At the hospital. With the sick kids." The way he said it made Maya's volunteer work sound like a made-up excuse. She felt a flash of indignation rise through her anxiety. "Yes," she said, her voice slightly firmer. "At Memorial Hospital. I read books to the children in the oncology ward. Some of them don't have family who can visit regularly. Another car slowed as it passed them, this time with a passenger filming the interaction on a phone. Officer Brennan noticed and straightened his posture. "Step out of the vehicle, please," he said. Maya's heart pounded against her ribs. "Did I do something wrong?" "Step out of the vehicle," he repeated, his hand moving to rest on his belt again. With shaking legs, Maya opened her door and stood beside her car. The sun felt too bright, too hot. Cars continued to pass by, some slowing down to watch. She felt like she was on display, like everyone could see how scared she was. "I'm going to search your vehicle," Officer Brennan announced. "Don't you need a warrant for that?" Maya asked, immediately regretting the question when she saw anger flash across his face. "Are you refusing to cooperate? Do you have something to hide?" "No, sir," Maya said quickly. "I just thought..." "You thought what?" "That you know the law better than I do." Officer Brennan's voice had risen, drawing more attention from passing vehicles. "I've been on the force for 15 years. Don't tell me how to do my job." More cars were slowing down now. A middle-aged woman had stopped completely on the other side of the road and was openly recording the scene on her phone. "I'm sorry," Maya said, fighting to keep her voice from breaking. "I didn't mean to be disrespectful." Officer Brennan looked around at their growing audience, then back at Maya. Something in his demeanor shifted slightly. "Get back in your car," he ordered. Maya complied immediately, sliding back into the driver's seat while Officer Brennan returned to his patrol car with her license and registration. Through her rearview mirror, she could see him talking on his radio, gesturing angrily. 10 minutes passed, then 15. Maya checked the time. She was definitely going to be late now. The kids would be waiting for her. There was a little boy, Thomas, who was expecting her to bring the next chapter of the adventure story they'd been reading together. Finally, Officer Brennan returned to her window and thrust a citation toward her along with her documents. "This is a warning for the speeding," he said coldly, "and a fix-it ticket for the taillight. You have 48 hours to repair it and bring proof to the station." "Thank you, officer," Maya said quietly, taking the papers. "Next time you're in a hurry to get somewhere, leave earlier," he added, "and tell your father to teach you some respect for law enforcement. We're not out here for our health, you know." Maya nodded, unable to trust her voice. As Officer Brennan walked away, she noticed one of the bystanders approaching him. They exchanged words, and she saw the officer's face darken before he waved the person off and returned to his patrol car. When Officer Brennan finally drove away, Maya let out a long, shaky breath. Her hands were trembling so badly she had to wait several minutes before she felt steady enough to drive. She checked her phone and saw 3 missed calls from the volunteer coordinator at the hospital. She called back, explaining through a tight throat what had happened. The coordinator was understanding, telling her to take her time and drive safely. But as Maya pulled back onto the road, she couldn't shake the feeling of injustice that clung to her like a shadow. She'd always been taught to trust police officers, to see them as protectors. Her father had raised her to respect authority and to believe in the system. But for the first time, she wondered if the system her father believed in so deeply was as fair as he claimed. As Maya drove toward the hospital, still shaken, she didn't notice the video of her traffic stop already beginning to circulate online. She didn't know that by the time she finished reading stories to sick children. Her face would be blurred, but her voice clear in a video titled, "Power-Tripping Cop Harasses Teenage Volunteer." And she certainly had no idea that within 24 hours, that video would reach her father's desk, a man whose identity would change. Everything about this seemingly routine traffic.
"Stop." Maya pulled into the hospital parking
Lot 20 minutes late for her volunteer shift. Her hands were still shaking as she turned off the engine. She sat for a moment trying to compose herself. The last thing these kids needed was to see her upset. She checked her reflection in the rearview mirror and wiped away the smudged mascara under her eyes. Taking a deep breath, she grabbed her volunteer bag from the passenger seat and headed toward the entrance. The automatic doors slid open, greeting her with the familiar antiseptic smell of the hospital. Despite coming here twice a week for over a year, Maya had never gotten used to that smell. It reminded her too much of when her mom was sick. "There you are," Nurse Diane called from behind the reception desk. Her kind face was creased with concern. "We were worried about you." "You're never late." "I'm so sorry," Maya said, signing in on the volunteer sheet. "I got pulled over on my way here." Diane's eyebrows shot up. Pulled over? What happened? Maya's throat tightened again. It was nothing, really. Just a broken taillight I didn't know about. The officer he wasn't very nice about it. Not nice how? Diane asked, her voice lowering. Maya shook her head. It doesn't matter now. I'm here. How's Thomas doing today? I brought the next chapter of his book. Diane seemed to understand Maya's need to change the subject. He's been asking for you since lunch. His latest round of chemo hit him pretty hard, but he perked right up when I told him it was your day to visit. Maya smiled, already feeling some of the tension from the traffic stop melting away. This was why she came here, why she volunteered her time. These kids faced real problems, real challenges. Her encounter with Officer Brennan seemed small in comparison. She made her way to the children's ward, waving to familiar faces as she passed. When she reached Thomas's room, she knocked gently on the doorframe. Is that my story, lady? Called a weak voice from inside. Maya entered with a smile. It sure is. And I've got chapter 7 with me. Thomas was sitting up in bed, his small frame dwarfed by pillows and monitoring equipment. At 9 years old, he'd already endured more hospital stays than most people experience in a lifetime. His hair was gone from the treatments and dark circles shadowed his eyes, but his smile was as bright as ever. You're late, he said, though there was no accusation in his voice. Did you get stuck in traffic? Maya set her bag down and pulled up a chair beside his bed. Something like that. A police officer stopped me on my way here. Thomas's eyes widened with interest. Were you speeding? Dad says speeding tickets are expensive. Just a little over the limit, Maya admitted. But mostly it was because of a broken tail light. Was the officer nice? Thomas asked. The police came to our school once. They let us sit in their car and turn on the siren. Maya hesitated, unsure how to answer. He was having a bad day, I think. Mom says everyone deserves a little grace when they're having a bad day, Thomas said. Wisdom beyond his years shining through his simple words. Maya felt a lump form in her throat. Your mom is very smart. Now where did we leave off in our story? For the next hour, Maya read to Thomas, doing all the character voices that made him laugh. By the time his mother arrived for evening visiting hours, both Maya and Thomas had forgotten about police officers and traffic stops. Thank you, Mrs. Chen whispered to Maya as she was leaving. These story times mean everything to him. Maya hugged her. They mean everything to me too. Maya's shift ended at 7. As she walked back to her car, she pulled out her phone for the first time since arriving. She was surprised to see several missed calls and text messages from friends. Are you okay? Just saw the video. That cop was way out of line. Is that you in the viral video with the police officer? Confused, Maya opened her social media app. Her feed was filled with shares of a video titled, Power-Tripping Cop Harasses Teenage Volunteer. She clicked on it with growing dread. The video, clearly filmed by a passerby, showed her standing beside her car while Officer Brennan towered over her. The person filming had been too far away to capture their exact words, but Officer Brennan's aggressive body language was unmistakable. The caption read, Watch this officer intimidate a young girl who was only going 5 over. She mentioned volunteering at the children's hospital and he mocked her. Share this. Maya felt sick as she scrolled through the comments. Some people were calling for Officer Brennan to be fired. Others were defending him, saying the video didn't show the whole story. Her name wasn't mentioned and her face was mostly turned away from the camera, but anyone who knew her car would recognize it. She quickly got into her vehicle and sat there unsure what to do. This was exactly what her father had always warned her about. Things going viral online, spinning out of control. He dealt with the fallout from viral videos all the time in his position. Her phone rang. It was her dad. Hey, Dad, she answered, trying to keep her voice casual. Maya, Judge Robert Wilson's voice was calm but serious. Are you still at the hospital? Just finished my shift. I'm in the parking lot. Good, stay there. I'm coming to pick you up. What? Why? My car's fine, Dad. I just need to get the taillight fixed. There was a pause. I saw the video, Maya. Her stomach dropped. Oh, why didn't you call me? His voice wasn't angry, just concerned. I didn't want to bother you with something so small. It was just a traffic stop. From what I saw in that video, it was more than just a traffic stop. His voice had taken on the tone he used in court. Measured, carefully controlled. I'll be there in 15 minutes. Don't drive anywhere. Meanwhile, across town at the police station, Officer James Brennan was being called into Captain Richards' office. "Close the door." "Brennan," the captain said, not looking up from his computer screen. James did as he was told, already suspecting what this was about. Word traveled fast in the department and he'd heard whispers about a video all afternoon. "Have a seat." Captain Richards gestured to the chair opposite his desk. James sat, back straight, face neutral. 15 years on the force had taught him how to wear a mask when necessary. "I'm assuming you know why you're here," the captain said, finally looking up. "The traffic stop this afternoon," James replied. "The video." "The video," Captain Richards echoed, turning his computer screen so James could see it. 300,000 views in 4 hours, Brennan. "Care to explain what happened?" James watched a few seconds of the footage, his face growing hot with a mix of embarrassment and defensiveness. "It doesn't show the whole story, sir." "Then tell me the whole story." James shifted in his seat. "I pulled her over for speeding. 5 over, nothing major. But then I noticed her tail light was out. She gave me some story about volunteering at the hospital, like that was supposed to make it okay." "And did you handle it professionally?" Captain Richards asked, his voice dangerously quiet. James looked down at his hands. "I was on a double shift, tired. Maybe I was a bit short with her." "A bit short?" Captain Richards played the video again. Even without clear audio, James's aggressive posture was evident. "This doesn't look a bit short to me, Brennan. This looks like intimidation." "She questioned my authority," James said, defensiveness creeping into his voice. "Asked if I needed a warrant to search her vehicle." "Did you have probable cause for a search?" James didn't answer immediately. Captain Richards sighed heavily. "This department can't afford another PR nightmare, Brennan. The budget cuts last quarter were bad enough. If the public thinks we're harassing teenagers on their way to volunteer with sick kids..." He let the sentence hang. "What's going to happen?" James asked. "The video's been flagged by the Oversight Committee. They've requested all your body cam footage and the dash cam from your cruiser." James felt his blood run cold. The Oversight Committee, that meant Judge Wilson would see it. "Take tomorrow off," Captain Richards said. "Paid leave until we sort this out. And Brennan, get some rest. You look terrible." As Judge Robert Wilson drove to the hospital to pick up his daughter, his phone rang through the car's Bluetooth system. "Wilson," he answered. "Judge, it's Harriet from the committee. I've got that footage you requested. The officer's name is James Brennan. 15 years on the force, mostly clean record. A few complaints about his attitude, but nothing major until now." Judge Wilson's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Send me everything you have. I want to review it tonight." "Will do. There's a committee meeting scheduled for Friday to discuss it." "Thank you, Harriet." He ended the call just as he pulled into the hospital parking lot. He spotted Maya standing next to her car, looking small and vulnerable in a way that made his heart ache. As a judge, he knew he should recuse himself from this case. His daughter's involvement was a clear conflict of interest. But as a father who had just watched his child be mistreated by someone who had sworn to protect and serve, all he could think about was justice. Maya got into his car without a word. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. She nodded, though her eyes told a different story. "It's not a big deal, Dad, really." "It is a big deal, Maya. No one should be treated that way, especially by a police officer. You're not going to make this into something huge, are you?" she asked, worry creasing her forehead. "I don't want to be known as the girl who got a cop in trouble." Judge Wilson sighed. His daughter had always been more concerned with others than herself. "Let's go home," he said. "Your mom's making your favorite dinner. And tomorrow we'll get that taillight fixed." As they drove away from the hospital, neither of them knew that this was just the beginning of a story that would change not only their lives, but the lives of everyone involved. Judge Robert Wilson sat in his home office late into the night, reviewing the footage from Officer Brennan's body camera. The digital clock on his desk showed 2:17 a.m., but sleep was the furthest thing from his mind. His coffee had gone cold hours ago. He played the video for the 4th time, watching the interaction between the police officer and his daughter. The audio was clear, capturing every word, every tone, every subtle threat. His jaw tightened as he heard Officer Brennan mock Maya's volunteer work. The body camera caught what the viral video hadn't: the dismissive smirk, the intentional intimidation. Robert rubbed his tired eyes. As head of the Police Oversight Committee, he had reviewed countless hours of similar footage. But this was different. This was his daughter, He clicked on another file, Officer Brennan's service record. 15 years on the force, 3 commendations for bravery. But there was a pattern in the complaints filed against him. Unnecessarily aggressive, hostile demeanor, escalated a routine situation. None had resulted in serious disciplinary action. Robert's phone buzzed with a text from his colleague on the committee. Just saw the footage. Clear violation of department policy. Meeting still on for Friday? He typed back, yes, 10 a.m. And Harriet, I need to disclose a conflict of interest. He set his phone down and leaned back in his chair. The right thing to do, the ethical thing, would be to recuse himself from this case. But another part of him, the father rather than the judge, wanted to make sure Officer Brennan was held accountable. A soft knock on his office door interrupted his thoughts. Dad? Maya stood in the doorway wearing pajamas and looking concerned. It's really late. Are you still working on that case? Robert quickly minimized the video on his screen. Just wrapping up. What are you doing awake? Maya came in and sat on the edge of his desk like she used to do as a little girl. I couldn't sleep. I keep thinking about what happened today. And the video? Her voice trailed off. I know, sweetheart. I'm sorry you had to go through that. It's not just about me, she said, surprising him. I was reading the comments on that video. So many people shared stories about similar experiences with police. People who didn't have someone like you to help them. Robert studied his daughter's face, seeing her mother's compassion reflected there. There's something I need to tell you, he said. As head of the oversight committee, I would normally be involved in reviewing this incident. But because you're my daughter, I'll need to step back from the case. Maya nodded slowly. I understand. That makes sense. She paused, then asked, what will happen to him? To Officer Brennan? That depends on the committee's findings. There could be disciplinary action, additional training, or in serious cases, termination. Do you think this is a serious case? She asked. Robert chose his words carefully. I think it shows a pattern of behavior that needs to be addressed. But I also believe in our system, even with its flaws. Officer Brennan deserves due process just like anyone else. Maya seemed to consider this. The kids at the hospital, they always talk about giving people second chances. Even when people make mistakes. Robert smiled at his daughter's generous heart. Sometimes people need more than just a second chance. They need help to change. Now off to bed with you. We both have busy days tomorrow. After Maya left, Robert turned back to his computer. Instead of closing the files, he opened Officer Brennan's personnel records again and began reading more carefully. Something in his daughter's words had sparked a thought. The next morning, Officer James Brennan woke up to sunlight streaming through his bedroom blinds. For a moment, he was confused. He never saw the morning sun on workdays. Then he remembered paid administrative leave. The events of the previous day came flooding back. The traffic stop, the video, the meeting with Captain Richards. He groaned and rolled over, burying his face in his pillow. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from his partner, Officer Chen. Saw the video. You okay? James didn't respond. What could he say? That he'd messed up? That he'd let his personal problems affect his professional conduct? That he was worried about facing Judge Wilson, whose reputation for being tough but fair was well known throughout the department? His phone buzzed again. This time it was Captain Richards. Committee meeting moved up to tomorrow, 10 a.m., be there. James threw off his covers and sat on the edge of his bed, his head in his hands. He'd been on administrative leave before, a shooting incident 5 years ago that had been ruled justified. But this felt different. This wasn't a split-second decision in a dangerous situation. This was him losing control over a routine traffic stop. He thought about the girl, Maya, according to her license. How scared she had looked standing beside her car. How she'd mentioned volunteering at the children's hospital, and how he'd dismissed it as a lie. His gaze drifted to the framed photo on his dresser, himself in dress uniform at his academy graduation, his wife beaming beside him, his son just a toddler then, sitting on his shoulders, back when he still believed in the job and himself. James showered and dressed, then did something he hadn't done in months. He called the department's counseling service. Officer Assistance Program, answered a gentle voice. This is Officer James Brennan, he said, his voice rough. I think I need to talk to someone. By Thursday afternoon, the video of Maya's traffic stop had over 1 million views. Local news stations had picked up the story, with headlines like "Local Officer Under Fire for Harassment" and "Viral Video Prompts Police Investigation." Maya's name wasn't mentioned, but the story had spread through her school anyway. "Everyone's talking about it," her friend Lily said as they walked to chemistry class. "Tyler recognized your car and told everyone it was you." Maya kept her eyes on the floor. "Great. You're like famous now," Lily continued, oblivious to Maya's discomfort. "Lisa Chen's cousin works at the police station. She says the officer's in big trouble." "I don't want him to be in trouble," Maya said quietly. "I just want to forget it happened." Lily looked at her strangely. "Why? He was awful to you. He was having a bad day, so? That doesn't give him the right to treat you like that." Maya couldn't explain why she felt conflicted. Maybe it was the hours she spent with sick children who taught her about forgiveness, or maybe it was the look on her father's face when he picked her up yesterday, a mixture of anger and determination that made her worry about what would happen next. "My dad's on the committee that's reviewing the case," she admitted to Lily. Lily's eyes widened. "No way, that's perfect. He can make sure that cop gets fired." "It's not perfect," Maya said. "Dad had to recuse himself. And anyway, getting someone fired doesn't solve the real problem." "Which is?" Maya thought for a moment. Why he acted that way in the first place. What made him so angry and bitter that he would treat a teenager like a criminal over a broken taillight. The bell rang before Lily could respond, and they hurried into class. But Maya's mind stayed on Officer Brennan and the committee meeting scheduled for the next day. At the police station, Captain Richards was reviewing files in preparation for tomorrow's meeting when there was a knock at his door. "Come in," he called. Judge Wilson entered, closing the door behind him. "Judge," Richards said, standing to shake his hand, "I didn't expect to see you here." "I've officially recused myself from tomorrow's hearing," Wilson said, taking a seat. "But I wanted to speak with you unofficially." Richards raised an eyebrow. "About Officer Brennan?" "Yes, I've been reviewing his file. The pattern of complaints, the increasing aggression, but I also saw his commendations from earlier in his career, the Community Policing Award, the letters from citizens praising his work with troubled youth. That was before his son got sick," Richards said, "before the medical bills started piling up. Before his wife took a second job and they rarely saw each other." Wilson nodded. "That's what I suspected. Has he been offered help? Counseling? Financial assistance?" "All of the above." "He's declined. Until today," Wilson said. "He called the Officer Assistance Program this morning." Richards looked surprised. "How do you know that?" "I serve on their board too," Wilson explained. "All contacts are confidential, of course, but the program director mentioned they'd received a call from an officer currently under review." It wasn't hard to connect the dots. Richards leaned back in his chair. "So what are you suggesting, Judge? That we go easy on him because he's finally asking for help after his behavior has gone viral?" Wilson shook his head. "Not at all. There need to be consequences, but perhaps punitive measures alone aren't the answer." "What did you have in mind?" Wilson pulled a folder from his briefcase. "A pilot program I've been developing with the hospital. Community service hours paired with counseling and training. Real rehabilitation, not just punishment." Richards took the folder, skepticism written across his face. "And you think Brennan would be a good candidate for this?" "I think he's exactly the kind of officer this program was designed for," Wilson said. "Someone who started with good intentions but lost his way." Richards flipped through the documents. "The committee won't approve this without your endorsement, and you've recused yourself." Wilson stood to leave. "Then it's a good thing I'm not the only one who believes in second chances, Captain. The final decision is yours." As Judge Wilson walked out of the station, he thought about what his daughter had said about the children at the hospital, about forgiveness and second chances. Maya would never know how much her words had influenced him, how they had reminded him of why he became a judge in the first place, not just to punish wrongdoing, but to help rebuild what was broken. Tomorrow, Officer James Brennan would face the committee. Tomorrow he would learn whether his career was over, or whether he was being offered a path to redemption. A path that would soon lead him face to face with the girl he had mistreated, and the father whose identity he was about to discover, Officer. James Brennan adjusted his tie for the third time as he sat in the waiting room outside the conference hall. The police headquarters building seemed unusually quiet this Friday morning. Perhaps everyone was avoiding him, or perhaps they were already inside, waiting to decide his fate. His knee bounced with nervous energy. The counseling session yesterday had been harder than he expected. Talking about his son's medical bills, his crumbling marriage, the growing bitterness he felt toward the job he once loved. It had left him emotionally drained. But also strangely lighter. The door opened and Captain Richards appeared. "They're ready for you." James stood, smoothing down his dress uniform. "How does it look in there?" Richards's face gave nothing away. "Just tell the truth, Brennan. That's all any of us can do." James followed the captain into the conference room. A long table dominated the space with 5 committee members seated on one side. James recognized most of them: city officials, community representatives, and police leadership. The chair at the center, usually occupied by Judge Wilson, was empty. In his place sat Harriet Chen, the deputy chair. "Officer Brennan," Harriet began, "thank you for being here. Please take a seat." James sat in the lone chair facing the committee. A projector screen behind them displayed a paused image from his body camera footage. "As you know," Harriet continued, "this committee has reviewed the video of your interaction with a young driver on Tuesday afternoon. We've also examined your service record, including prior complaints and commendations. Today we'd like to hear your perspective on what happened." James took a deep breath. He had rehearsed what to say, prepared excuses and explanations. But looking at the frozen image on the screen, the fear on Maya's face when he had ordered her out of the car, all those prepared words fell away. "I was wrong," he said simply. A murmur passed through the committee members. "Could you elaborate?" Harriet asked. "I was tired, working a double shift, dealing with personal issues. But none of that excuses my behavior." James looked directly at the committee. "I was unprofessional. I was intimidating. I used my position of authority to make someone feel small and powerless, and that goes against everything I swore to uphold when I joined the force." "And the young woman's statement about volunteering at the hospital?" another committee member asked. James felt shame burn through him. "I didn't believe her. I assumed she was lying to get out of a ticket. I've since learned she does volunteer there regularly." Harriet nodded, making a note. "This committee has received multiple complaints about your conduct over the past year, Officer Brennan, all showing a similar pattern of escalation and aggression. How do you explain this change in your behavior?" James looked down at his hands. "A year ago, my son was diagnosed with a rare kidney disease. The treatments are expensive, and our insurance doesn't cover all of it. My wife took a second job. I started working overtime. We're drowning in medical debt, and I—" His voice cracked. "I took my frustration out on the public I'm supposed to protect. There's no excuse for that." The room was silent for a moment. "Thank you for your honesty," Harriet said finally. "We'd like to show you something." She nodded to Captain Richards, who clicked a button on the laptop. The screen changed to show a security camera feed from the hospital. It showed Maya reading to a small boy in a hospital bed. Even without audio, it was clear she was doing different voices for the characters, making the child laugh despite the medical equipment surrounding him. "This is from Memorial Hospital's children's ward," Harriet explained. "The young woman you stopped, Maya Wilson, has volunteered there for over a year. That boy is Thomas Chen, my nephew. He has leukemia." James felt as though the air had been sucked from the room. "I didn't know." "Of course you didn't," Harriet said. "But you assumed she was lying anyway." Another committee member spoke up. "Officer Brennan, we're faced with a decision today. Your behavior clearly warrants disciplinary action. The question is what form that action should take." Captain Richards cleared his throat. "If I may, the department has been developing a pilot program in partnership with the courts and Memorial Hospital. It combines community service with counseling and specialized training. I'd like to recommend Officer Brennan as a candidate for this program, in addition to any other sanctions the committee deems appropriate." James looked at his captain in surprise. This was the first he'd heard of any program. "This is highly unusual," one committee member objected. "The program hasn't even been officially approved yet." "Actually," Harriet said, "Judge Wilson fast-tracked the approval yesterday before recusing himself from this case." James frowned. "Judge Wilson recused himself? Why?" The door at the back of the room opened. James turned to see who had entered and felt his heart stop. Standing there was Maya Wilson, the girl from the traffic stop, and beside her, Judge Robert Wilson. In that moment, James understood everything. The judge's daughter. He had harassed the judge's daughter. Sorry to interrupt, Judge Wilson said. Maya has asked to make a statement to the committee. Harriet looked surprised but nodded. We'll hear it. Maya walked to the front of the room, her eyes briefly meeting James's before she turned to face the committee. She looked different now, confident, composed, so unlike the frightened girl he had intimidated by the roadside. Thank you for letting me speak, she began. I know my dad had to step back from this case because of me, but I wanted you to hear my perspective. What happened during that traffic stop was scary and humiliating. Officer Brennan abused his power, and I think there should be consequences for that. James felt each word like a physical blow. But, Maya continued, I don't think ruining someone's career is always the right answer. The kids I work with at the hospital have taught me a lot about forgiveness, about how people can change when they're given the right support. She glanced back at James, then returned her attention to the committee. I think Officer Brennan should do community service at the hospital. Not as a punishment, but as a chance to remember why he became a police officer in the first place. To help people, not frighten them. The room was silent when she finished. Judge Wilson placed a supportive hand on his daughter's shoulder, and they left as quietly as they had entered. James sat stunned, unable to process what had just happened. The girl he had treated so poorly was advocating for him to receive help, rather than punishment. Judge Wilson, who had every reason to ensure he lost his job, had instead created a program that might save his career. After a few moments, Harriet spoke. Thank you, Officer Brennan. The committee will deliberate now. Please wait outside. The hallway felt endless as James paced back and forth. 45 minutes had passed. His future hung in the balance, and all he could think about was the look in Maya's eyes when she spoke. Not vengeful, but compassionate. He turned a corner and nearly collided with Judge Wilson, who was getting water from a drinking fountain. Sir, James said, immediately straightening his posture, I want to apologize. I had no idea she was your daughter. But that's no excuse for how I treated her. Judge Wilson studied him carefully. Would you have treated her differently if you had known who her father was, Officer Brennan? The question hit James like a punch to the gut. I'd like to say no, that I treat everyone with respect. But given my recent behavior, I'm not sure that would be true. Wilson nodded, seemingly appreciative of the honesty. My daughter sees the best in people, officer. It's a quality I've always admired in her. When she suggested you might benefit from working at the hospital, I was skeptical. But then I remembered the officer you used to be. The one who received commendations for community policing. The one who started a basketball league for at-risk youth. James looked down. That feels like a lifetime ago. It doesn't have to, Wilson said. Whatever the committee decides, I hope you'll consider continuing with the counseling. Not just for your job, but for yourself, for your family. How did you know about my son? James asked. It's my job to understand the people who come before me, Wilson replied, both their actions and their circumstances. Before James could respond, Captain Richards appeared in the hallway. They've reached a decision. James returned to the conference room, where Harriet Chen sat with a folder open before her. Officer James Brennan, she began formally. This committee has reviewed all evidence related to your conduct during the traffic stop on Tuesday, as well as your service record and personal testimony. We have decided on the following sanctions. James held his breath. You will be suspended without pay for 2 weeks. You will complete 40 hours of community service at Memorial Hospital. You will attend mandatory counseling sessions twice weekly for 3 months. And you will participate in an intensive retraining program focused on de-escalation techniques and appropriate use of authority. James exhaled slowly. Not termination. A chance. Additionally, Harriet continued, you will be assigned to desk duty for 3 months following your suspension, after which time your case will be reviewed again to determine your readiness to return to patrol duties. I understand, James said. Thank you for this opportunity. Don't thank us yet, Officer Brennan, Harriet said, her expression serious. This is not leniency. This is a structured path to rehabilitation. If you fail to meet any of these requirements or if there are any further incidents, termination will be immediate. Is that clear? Crystal clear, James replied. As he left the room, James felt a strange mixture of emotions, relief, shame, gratitude, and something else he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. Monday morning he would begin his community service at Memorial Hospital, where he would inevitably cross paths with Maya Wilson again. The thought filled him with dread but also determination. He would make this right. He had to. The antiseptic smell hit Officer James Brennan as soon as he walked through the automatic doors of Memorial Hospital. He was dressed in civilian clothes, jeans and a button-up shirt, but he still stood straight, shoulders back as if in uniform. "Old habits died hard. You must be Officer Brennan," said a cheerful voice. A middle-aged nurse with kind eyes approached the information desk where he'd been waiting. Her name tag read Diane. "Just James is fine," he replied, extending his hand. "I'm here to start my community service." If Diane recognized him from the viral video or the news stories that followed, she didn't show it. "We're happy to have the help. I'll show you where to get your volunteer badge and then introduce you to our volunteer coordinator." As they walked down the corridor, James tried to ignore the nervous flutter in his stomach. Somewhere in this building was Maya Wilson, and eventually they would cross paths. What would he say to her? How could he possibly make things right? "You look worried," Diane observed as they waited for the elevator. "First day jitters?" James managed a weak smile. "Something like that. Don't be. The kids are wonderful. Sometimes sad, sometimes scared, but always brave. You'll learn more from them than they'll ever learn from you." The elevator doors opened and they stepped inside. James thought about his own son, David, and his ongoing battle with kidney disease. How brave he was during treatments. How he never complained even on his worst days. "I have a son," James said suddenly. "He's been in and out of hospitals for the past year. Different hospital, different wing, but I know what these families are going through." Diane's expression softened. "Then you're exactly where you need to be." For his first day, James was assigned to the hospital's playroom, where children who were well enough could escape their rooms for a few hours. His job was simple: help set up activities, clean up afterward, and most importantly, engage with the kids. A small boy in Spider-Man pajamas approached him cautiously. "Can you help me build this?" He held up a box of colorful building blocks. "Sure," James said, kneeling down to the child's level. "I'm James. I'm Thomas," the boy said. "I'm 9. I have leukemia." The straightforward way Thomas stated his diagnosis caught James off guard. "I'm sorry to hear that," Thomas shrugged. "It's okay. My doctors are really smart. And Maya says being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing things even when you are scared." James froze at the mention of Maya's name. "Maya, is she your friend?" Thomas's face lit up. "She reads me stories. She does all the voices. She's coming today to finish the Dragon book." As if on cue, James heard a familiar voice behind him. "Hey, Thomas! Ready for the last chapter?" James turned slowly. Maya Wilson stood in the doorway, a book in her hands, her smile faltering slightly when she saw him. "Maya," Thomas called excitedly. "This is James. He's helping me build a castle." Maya walked over, her expression guarded but not hostile. "Hi, James. Hi, Maya," he replied. His throat suddenly dry. An awkward silence stretched between them, broken only by Thomas's happy chatter as he continued building. "I didn't know you'd be here today," Maya finally said. "First day," James explained. "I'm assigned to the playroom this week." Maya nodded. "I usually read to Thomas in his room, but he's feeling good enough to be out here today." Another silence fell. James could feel the weight of their unspoken history hanging in the air. "Maya," he began. Not now," she interrupted gently, glancing at Thomas. "The kids come first here." James understood immediately. "Of course, but maybe after?" she suggested, surprising him. "I'll be done in about an hour." "I'll be here," he promised. The hour passed slowly as James helped other children with puzzles and games, all while acutely aware of Maya's presence across the room. She sat with Thomas in a reading nook, her animated voice bringing the story of a brave knight and a misunderstood dragon to life. When she finished, Thomas clapped his hands in delight. "That was the best story ever!" "I'm glad you liked it," Maya said, giving him a careful hug. "I'll bring a new book next time." As Maya said goodbye to Thomas and the other children, James busied himself cleaning up scattered toys. He was organizing a shelf when she approached him. "There's a coffee shop on the first floor," she said, "if you want to talk." 10 minutes later, they sat across from each other at a small table, paper cups of coffee creating a barrier between them. I want to apologize, James began, looking directly at her. What I did was inexcusable. The way I treated you, the things I said, none of it was okay. Maya studied him, her expression thoughtful. Why did you do it, really? James considered deflecting, giving the sanitized version he'd presented to the committee. But Maya deserved better than that. I was angry, he admitted. At the world. At the system. At myself. My son has been sick for a year. The medical bills keep piling up. My wife and I barely see each other between our jobs. I felt like I was drowning, and instead of getting help, I took it out on everyone around me. Especially you. That sounds really hard, Maya said quietly. It is, James agreed. But it's not an excuse. Nothing excuses how I treated you. Maya wrapped her hands around her coffee cup, warming them. When I was 12, my mom got sick, cancer. For 2 years, our lives revolved around hospitals and treatments. Dad and I were scared all the time, but we couldn't show it because Mom needed us to be strong. James listened, wondering where she was going with this. After she died, Maya continued, Dad threw himself into his work. I think it was his way of coping. I chose this. She gestured at the hospital around them. Helping kids like Thomas. It makes me feel close to her somehow. Is that why you asked for community service instead of having me fired? James asked. A small smile touched Maya's lips. Partly. And partly because I've seen what grief and fear can do to good people. It can make them forget who they really are. James felt a lump form in his throat. I'm not sure I remember who that is anymore. Maybe this is your chance to find out, Maya suggested. These kids have a way of reminding you what matters. Over the next few weeks, James continued his community service at the hospital. Each shift, each interaction with the children chipped away at the hard shell he'd built around himself. He learned the names of regular patients, discovered which games each child preferred, celebrated small victories like a good test result or a day without nausea. He started bringing his own son, David, to meet some of the children. They formed a special bond with Thomas, who shared the same love of superheroes and building blocks. On days when Thomas was too sick for the playroom, James would read to him, trying his best to do the character voices the way Maya did. One afternoon, Judge Wilson arrived at the hospital while James was helping Thomas with a puzzle. Officer Brennan, the judge greeted him, clearly surprised to find him there outside his required hours. Judge Wilson, James nodded respectfully, then turned to Thomas. I'll be right back, buddy. The two men stepped into the hallway. Maya mentioned you've been coming in on your days off, Wilson said. James shrugged slightly. These kids, they have a way of putting things in perspective. How's your son doing? Better, James said, surprised by the judge's knowledge of his personal situation. He's on a new treatment protocol. The doctors are optimistic, Wilson nodded. I'm glad to hear it. And how are you doing? James considered the question. The counseling sessions, though difficult, had been helping.
He and his wife were communicating better.
The crushing weight of his anger had begun to lift. I'm getting there, he answered honestly. Good, Wilson said, because the 3-month review is coming up. Captain Richards speaks highly of your progress. I appreciate that, sir. Wilson studied him for a moment. You know, when I started the hospital program, I never expected its first participant would be someone who had wronged my daughter. Life has a strange way of coming full circle, James said. Indeed it does, Wilson agreed. Maya tells me you've connected with young Thomas. James smiled. He reminds me of my son, brave in ways I could never be. Children often are, Wilson said. They haven't learned to limit themselves yet. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment before Wilson spoke again. The department is putting together a new community outreach unit. Officers who work directly with schools, community centers, hospitals. Captain Richards mentioned your name as a potential candidate after your probationary period ends. James looked up in surprise. Really? Your experience here, Wilson gestured around the hospital corridor, combined with your previous work with youth programs, it seems like a natural fit. I'd be honored to be considered, James said sincerely. As Judge Wilson left, James returned to Thomas, who was still working diligently on his puzzle. Who was that? Thomas asked. He looked important. James smiled. That was Maya's dad. And yes, he is important. He's the reason I'm here. Because he's a judge? Thomas asked innocently. James thought about how his encounter with Maya had changed the course of his life. how it had forced him to confront his anger and seek help, how it had ultimately led him to this hospital room, helping this brave little boy with his puzzle. That's part of it, James replied, but mostly because he and Maya gave me a second chance when I didn't deserve one. Thomas considered this as he snapped another puzzle piece into place. Maya says everybody deserves a second chance. Even dragons, James laughed softly. She's a wise person, your Maya. She is, Thomas agreed. And so are you, James. As they finished the puzzle together, James thought about how differently things could have turned out. If he hadn't pulled Maya over that day, if someone hadn't recorded the interaction, if Judge Wilson hadn't been looking for a test case for his program, what had begun as the worst mistake of his career had become an opportunity for growth and redemption. His cruel behavior had indeed backfired, but in the most unexpected and ultimately healing way possible. And as he helped Thomas celebrate completing the puzzle, Officer James Brennan realized he had found his way back to the person he used to be. The officer who became a cop not to exert power, but to protect and serve his community. One child, one puzzle piece at a time,